Now, lastly, and just in the name of completeness, there are a couple of different topics I want to show you back here, both on the direct access server, as well as one quick thing that is over in group policy, having to do with the name resolution policy table. And this is, again, just to help de-confuse you as you start looking through these different screens that you see here in the remote access management console. We've already stepped through a variety of these. We took a look at step one over here where we saw the deployment scenario and the groups we used, as well as the network connectivity assistant. But over here in step two is where we can further configure this direct access experience for added security or to expose it to additional sets of clients. I want to show you down here under Authentication that for everything that we've done so far, so everything that we've configured thus far is going to function when I'm using this for Windows 8 and 8.1 clients. Now, this is the case because Windows 7 clients require some additional effort in order to get them connected in, not the least of which being that Windows 7 client computers require computer certificates, client computer certificates, and a functioning PKI so that you can distribute those certificates to those Windows 7 machines. Windows 8 and 8.1 machines can use Kerberos as part of that authentication, so there's no need for these extra certificates. But down here, if you want to use this with Windows 7 client computers, you've got a little extra work here to do with creating and deploying out computer certificates, client certificates onto each machine. It is possible here with direct access to actually connect direct access with network access protection, which is another topic that we'll talk about in that last course in this learning path. But network access protection, you should know that NAP is actually deprecated in Windows Server 2012 R2. So odds are you probably won't be checking this box, but it is a feature that you can add into your direct access experience if you wanted to. We also talked about the extra requirements here for two-factor authentication. In the configuration we've built here so far, we have a single public IP address that external interface on the direct access server is connecting through. In order to do two-factor authentication, you do have to have those two consecutive IP addresses to support that. I also want to show you down here a very confusing extra dialog box over here on the right-hand side that has to do with the infrastructure servers and the application servers. Now, there are a couple of tunnels, two different tunnels that get created by direct access to connect up clients with the internal environment. Those two tunnels allow you to separate out the servers and services that could potentially connect with the client prior to the user logging in, as opposed to the servers and services that require the user to be logged in to access some resource. Now, these infrastructure servers are those that are accessed by direct clients before they connect to internal resources. The long and short of this is that if you have management servers that you need to manage out, or that you need clients to be able to talk to without users logging in and interacting with them, it's here where you can enter those management servers. These would be things like domain controllers. These would be things like configuration manager servers. In any of those manage out scenarios, there's a lot of additional other configuration that's required, but this is the location where you would define what those are. By default, your domain controllers, and I believe even your config manager servers, are identified and included in this list, even though you don't see them here. But any other servers that you may require, like WSUS servers, for example, those you would enter here under management servers. The other servers, the other connections that occur through that second tunnel can be further secured down here under application servers. Now, if I click the edit button here, this screen is a little complex here. The wording is a little challenging, but what Microsoft is essentially saying is that out of the box, you now have the ability to communicate with your internal servers using end-to-edge authentication and encryption. What this means is that the traffic coming out of the client and connecting up to the direct access server, that endpoint, will be authenticated and will be encrypted using the certificate on the direct access server itself. If you optionally wanted to extend that encryption all the way through to the inside server in an end-to-end configuration, it's here where you would check this box to extend authentication and also potentially encryption to those internal servers. Now, you don't have to do this. This is optional only if you need to have encryption all the way through and not terminate at the direct access server itself. Now, for one final configuration here that you may want to pay attention to, I'm going to flip back to our server dc.company.pri, and only because that's the closest place where I have the group policy management console installed. We already have taken a look at one location where you can configure the name resolution policy table for your direct access infrastructure, but it is entirely possible for you to reconfigure that also in a group policy. I would not do it on the direct access client settings policy, but I'll use it as an example to show you what we configured before. That NRPT is configured right here under Computer Configuration, Policies, Windows Settings, Name Resolution Policy. So right here. And if we take a look at our name resolution policy, this is kind of a complex group policy view here. But what we're really looking at is this second tab here called DNS Settings for Direct Access. If you configure another DNS setting in this policy, what it will do is update the name resolution policy table that you see down here at the bottom. What this is saying is that any attempt to resolve a machine whose name ends in .company.pri, that resolution will occur against the DNS server identified here. Now, this is the direct access's translated IP address for that DNS server, but it's essentially the inside server, this dc.company.pri. The server remote1.company.pri, as you can see here, because there is no information here, the client will be prevented from using the internal IP address, so that translated IPv6 address. This is important because remote1 is a server that has an external IP address. When you're out in the world, you have to connect with remote1 first. And so you don't want it attempting to use the internal DNS servers in order to attach to remote1. That's why you don't see anything here in the direct access column, because this is blank. The same thing holds true down here at the bottom with the NLS address, that network location server address, which is used when clients attempt to determine whether or not they're inside or outside. For that address, we also want to make sure we use our locally configured DNS server as well. If you have other servers, maybe you got a web server, maybe you have an externally accessible application server, that you do not want direct access clients to attempt to resolve using your internal DNS settings, well, the way in which you configure those is by checking the box here to enable DNS settings for direct access against the address that you set up here. So the suffix or actual A record address that you would set up here. So again, this is a fairly complex configuration, but you may need this if you have those resources that you want to guarantee your clients will attempt to use external network resolution as opposed to your inside DNS servers.